I'm Charles Templeton. I'm sure you all recognize this black satchel, this mysterious little bag that your doctor carries with him when he visits his patients. Well, the stories behind this bag are legion, and it's become, well, a kind of symbol of help and comfort to the sick. Now, the doctor's satchel has changed in the past few years. Not too much on the outside, it's true, but its contents have altered considerably. Where it once contained not much more than the traditional stethoscope and a few pain relievers, it's now a miniature dispensary, a collection of new wonder drugs and other items which are indispensable to modern patient care. This picture on my desk, the doctor, represents the kind of medical care which was typical not too many years ago. Here the doctor waits patiently, armed only with the contents of his satchel, his knowledge, his experience, and of course, a heart full of concern. But things are different today. Your doctor is now equipped with new knowledge, new skills, new instruments, new drugs, and he brings you new hope, hope of a longer, healthier life. Now, when the condition of the patient warrants it, your doctor calls upon the almost unlimited resources of the modern community hospital, the hospital which your community has provided for the care of the sick. Here, within these walls, are the scientific facilities and the highly trained personnel to help your modern doctor perform what virtually are miracles of healing. Many illnesses which once, literally numbered the days for the patient, are now conquered through the skill of the doctor and the professional and technical assistance of the hospital staff. These advances and changes in the field of medicine and hospital care have brought us a great many blessings. But they've brought their problems too. Some of these problems lay in the provision of hospital facilities locally and in the coordination of these facilities on a province-wide basis. Other problems, more apparent to most of us, I imagine, as individuals, are those which have affected the cost, not only of the facilities, but of maintaining them and providing the personnel to help the doctor take care of his patients. The hospital team, with its nurses, technicians, pharmacists, dietitians, business office personnel, maintenance staffs, and a host of other people, is a very complex group. Each one, however, plays his or her part, directly or indirectly, in the care of the patient. Now, it's easy to see, therefore, that there can be no such thing as free hospital care, because everyone employed in a hospital must be paid, and facilities such as supplies, light, heat, and so on are as costly to the hospital as to any other organization, and often, indeed, they're more costly, as hospitals must have the best. Now, like everything else in our day, the cost of hospital care has also been affected by the inflationary trends of our time. So it's been necessary to do something about spreading the cost among the general population of the province in order that everyone will have equal financial access to the care they need when they need it. This is why a province-wide basic hospital insurance plan is being launched in Ontario by the Ontario Hospital Services Commission come January 1st, 1959. This hospital plan is a means of, rearranging the financing of hospital care on a more systematic basis. It's the logical way to spread the cost of basic services in all public hospitals. I'm sure there isn't one of us, but what we know of cases where the family life savings have, just literally gone out the window because of large hospital bills. Well, this kind of catastrophe can come to an end after January 1st next year for all those who were covered through the Ontario Hospital Insurance Plan. Now, I know you'll have several questions in your mind. The first one perhaps may be, what benefits will this plan provide? Well, the plan will provide cover for basic hospital care. That is, all the standard ward hospital services you require for the treatment of your illness for as many days as these services are medically necessary. Now, perhaps you're asking, in any hospital? Yes, in any approved hospital. And approved hospitals will include public general hospitals, hospitals for convalescents and the chronically ill, sanatoria for consumptives, and the provincial mental hospitals. Some private hospitals will also be eligible to provide benefits, but each of these will have to apply to the Commission for approval. Now, I should point out here that there will be no waiting period before benefits will be available for any specific condition. Conditions such as childbirth, tonsils, adenoids, appendices, hernias, and so on. And it won't matter either if these conditions existed before your protection under the plan became effective. They will all be covered if you are insured, and there will be no restriction due to age. Now, perhaps you're asking, what about the cost? Well, the premiums will be $2.10 a month for a single person and $4.20 a month for a family. And the family premium covers the husband, the wife, all unmarried, unemployed children under age 19, and children over 19, dependent upon their parents because of physical or mental infirmity. Now, these premiums, of course, are very low for the broad coverage that's to be provided. And that is because approximately 1/3 of the cost will be borne by the provincial government, and about 1/3 will be paid out of the treasury of the federal government. Participation in the plan is open to every resident of Ontario. Let me make this clear. If you make your home in this province, you are eligible. However, you must register and pay premiums, of course, in order to benefit. And here's how all this is to be done. All residents employed in a firm in Ontario where there are 15 or more residents on the payroll must enroll for this protection, and they will pay monthly premiums through their place of employment. The Commission will be asking all employers in this category to submit a list of their employees by August 31st, 1958. Now, enrollment will be voluntary for all persons not employed where there are 15 or more on the payroll. This means that every resident of the province can obtain protection as of January 1st, 1959, provided they register and prepay their premiums. Now, here's how the voluntary enrollment is going to be handled. If you work in Ontario, where there are from 6 to 14 residents of Ontario on the payroll, including the employer, your employer may apply to enroll his staff as an employed group. If your employer does not wish to form a group, the employees may enroll separately and pay directly to the Commission. Now, if you are not employed where there are enough people to form a group, you simply enroll as an individual and pay directly to the Commission every 3 months. The benefits and the rates are the same, whether you pay through a group or directly to the Commission. The only difference is that individuals pay quarterly instead of monthly. Now, there's another type of group enrollment which should be mentioned here. The Commission will be glad to consider the enrollment of the members of organized groups like farmers' cooperatives, professional associations, credit unions, and so on, providing, of course, the organization is willing to act as collector on behalf of its members and remit premiums to the Commission each month. The Commission will be glad to give details on this type of enrollment to any interested organization. The hospital benefits will be made available to recognized social assistance persons whose inability to pay a premium has been demonstrated by a means test. Now, these include needy persons in receipt of old age security and assistance payments, blind persons' allowances, mothers' allowances, and disabled persons' allowances. Now, here's an important point to remember. As an incentive to early enrollment in the insurance plan, all persons who enroll in time to have protection effective on January 1st, 1959, will be given 2 months free coverage, which, believe me, will be a very handy cushion if at any time they're unable to keep up their payments. Now, as we're all very aware, a commendable job has been done in the field of hospital care prepayment by private enterprise over the past 15 years. The results of the untiring efforts of non-profit plans like Blue Cross and of the insurance companies is that about 72% of the people of Ontario now have some degree of hospital care protection. But naturally, no private organization could have been expected to provide the very comprehensive benefits that will be provided by the Hospital Services Commission when 2/3 of commission costs will be paid out of the federal and provincial treasuries. The private companies will have a continuing role, however, in selling additional coverage for such items as the difference between standard ward and semi-private or private hospital accommodations, medical benefits, home care, and so on. January 1st, 1959, will be a date to be remembered in the history of Ontario, for on that day will be born a new peace of mind for our citizens. It will spell the end of hospital bill worries for those who remember to be registered to benefit. Now that we've given you a general outline of the hospital insurance plan, I'd like you to meet two members of the Ontario Hospital Services Commission, Dr. John B. Nielsen, Director of Hospital Services, and Mr. David W. Ogilvie, Director of Insurance Services. With these two gentlemen, we're going to try and anticipate to answer some of the questions that you might ask if you were here. Dr. Nielsen, I wonder if you'd tell us something about the Ontario Hospital Services Commission. Just what are its primary functions?
The Ontario Hospital Services Commission was established by the Government of Ontario with two basic activities. The first of these is to develop a balanced and integrated system of hospitals and related health services in our province. The second responsibility is to develop and bring into operation an insurance plan which will make hospital services readily available to all residents of our province.
Now, you said a balanced and integrated system of hospitals. Just what do you mean by that?
Well, I think it means this. It means the right hospital services available in the right place and at the right time. I think I can explain that a little bit further. If an individual has an acute illness that requires admission to a hospital, then we must have sufficient general hospital beds available to care for that acute illness. If the illness is more prolonged and requires a period of convalescence, or if the condition is a chronic one, then we should have available hospitals that will care for that type of illness. These hospitals can be made available at a lesser cost than the more active hospital, and we can transfer patients to those hospitals, thereby making the beds available for individuals with acute illness.
Well, now, Dr. Nielsen, does this mean that the Commission is taking over the public hospitals in Ontario?
Decidedly not. We feel very strongly that we must preserve the autonomy of our community hospitals, and that our function is to assist these hospitals and not to interfere with them. As a central body, we will be in a position to look at the whole provincial picture and will be able to advise hospital boards on the type of hospitals they should build and the type of facilities they should provide in those hospitals.
Mr. Ogilvie, as Director of the Commission's Insurance Services, what effect do you think the introduction of this insurance will have on hospital beds? Do you anticipate, for instance, that there'll be a tremendous demand on the hospitals come January 1st?
I doubt it, Mr. Templeton. As you said earlier, some 72% of Ontario's population now have hospital insurance protection. Their need for hospital care shouldn't be stepped up with the introduction of our plan on January 1st. The balance of the population may have among it some people who have been putting off hospital care for want of insurance or ready cash. Now they'll be able to obtain it. You'll agree that that's a good thing. You'll also agree, I think, that people don't go to hospital for the sheer pleasure of it.
Tell me a little more now about residency in Ontario. As I understand it, this is the primary requisite for eligibility to enroll in the insurance plan. How long does a person have to be a resident in Ontario to qualify to register?
There's no time period prescribed for residency as such. However, any resident who fails to enroll before January the 1st, 1959 will have to wait a 3-month period before becoming eligible for plan benefits.
Would you tell me, please, when people have to be registered in order to have protection effective January 1st, 1959, so as to take advantage of that 2 months free coverage which has been offered?
Well, now, Mr. Templeton, that's a very important question. I want to be certain that you get a clear answer. Persons enrolling in groups through place of employment must be registered by August 31st this year. And the first premium must be paid to the Commission in December this year. That 1-month payment will cover the employees to the end of March 1959. Now, persons who are enrolling individually must register by the end of September this year and pay for 1 month at the time they register. This will cover them to the end of March also. Their next payment will be due in January, and it will be for 3 months to cover the months of April, May, and June 1959.
Now, here's a question that may be just a little tricky. What happens in the case of a firm, say in Ottawa or Windsor, which employs people who live across the border in, Hull or Detroit?
There's nothing really tricky about that, Mr. Templeton. Keep in mind that residency is the guide. So that if an Ontario employer employs workers who live outside of the province of Ontario, such employees, those employees who are not residents, are not eligible for benefits.
What about a firm outside of Ontario which employs people who live in Ontario?
If the employees work in Ontario and live in Ontario, they're eligible for enrollment as an employed group. Of course, if there are more than 15 in the group living in Ontario, enrollment is mandatory for them. They must enroll.
Thank you, Mr. Ogilvie. Now, let me return to Dr. Nielsen and find out some more about hospital services in Ontario. Dr. Nielsen, you said the Commission will not be taking over the hospitals, that they'll continue as community enterprises. Well, now, does this mean that the hospitals will still be conducting fundraising campaigns?
Well, yes, it will. As our hospitals continue to expand, as we improve the services in our hospitals, we will have to have public support. I think we have every reason in this province to be proud of the way our hospitals have developed in our communities, where they have received the support of individuals, local business, and industry. I think, too, as we develop our hospitals further, that we will continue to have that pride of ownership, which means so much to good hospital care in our communities.
But what about the deficits that public hospitals have been experiencing for years because of, the care provided indigent persons who don't have the funds to pay their hospital bills? Will these deficits disappear when the plan begins to function?
Yes, this deficit problem will largely disappear. The municipalities will continue to make payments to the hospitals for their indigent patients as they have in the past. But the payment made will be largely compensated for by an increase in the unconditional grants made by the province to the municipality.
Will there be any change in the way hospitals will charge for patient care under the new plan?
Yes, there will be quite a decided change. The old system, whereby a charge was made for accommodation and additional charges for use of the operating room, provision of drugs, and so on, will be replaced by an all-inclusive daily rate, which will cover the cost of hospital services given to the patient.
Mr. Ogilvie, you've said 2 or 3 times that the Commission's insurance plan becomes effective January 1st, 1959. Is that right?
Yes, at 12:01 a.m. New Year's Day.
Well, now, the point I'm trying to make is this. Will the Commission be the only organization providing standard ward hospital benefits from then on? And if so, what happens to the present coverage that people have?
That's a very important point. Beginning on January the 1st, 1959, the Hospital Services Commission Plan will be the only insurance plan covering standard ward hospital care. Everybody, groups and individuals, should arrange to discontinue the standard ward hospital care part of any coverage they may have in effect as of midnight, December 31st, 1958. I can't emphasize this too strongly. I'd like to say here, too, that we've had the very best cooperation from the insurance industry and from the nonprofit plans. They've been of great assistance.
Well, then this seems a good reason for people to take action this summer and fall to register so that they'll be certain to be covered and benefit.
Yes, it certainly is. And another very good reason is that starting in 1959, everyone will be contributing towards 2/3 of the cost of the program through their contributions to the general revenues of the provincial and federal governments.
Mr. Ogilvy, will the Commission be publicizing this insurance plan so that everyone will know how and when to register?
Oh, yes, Mr. Templeton. During the spring and summer months, wide publicity will be given to the details of the plan using media such as newspaper, radio, and other media.
Does the plan cover doctors' charges for medical care and operations when a person is in a hospital?
No. This is purely a hospital plan. The plan will not pay for a surgeon's or doctor's fee.
How about emergency service? Supposing, for instance, a person has an accident and is not admitted as an inpatient. Will the Commission's plan cover this?
Yes, the plan will provide outpatient emergency benefits following an accident, but only immediately following an accident. That is, within 24 hours of the accident.
Well, now, Mr. Ogilvy, supposing a person is hospitalized outside of Ontario, say in another province or even another country.
In the case of sudden attack of illness or accident requiring emergency admission to hospital anywhere outside of Ontario, the Commission will reimburse that hospitalized patient up to the amount it would have incurred for similar services in a comparable hospital in Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Supposing the patient prefers semi-private or private accommodations when he goes to hospital, how much would the Commission plan pay?
The Commission will pay up to the level of standard ward care. The patient, or the patient's insurance company, or his Blue Cross plan, will pay the difference between standard ward care and semi-private or private accommodation.
A little while ago, Mr. Ogilvy, you spoke of collectors groups, I believe. I think this would be of special interest to our rural people. Now, what should they do?
They should get in touch with their rural co-op or their credit union to see whether or not it is the intention of the cooperative or credit union to form a group. If the rural resident finds that he cannot enroll through a group, then he should be careful to enroll as an individual by September 30th, 1958.
And now, Mr. Ogilvy, one last question. Will printed literature about the plan be available to anyone requiring it?
Yes, anyone wanting literature should write directly to the Ontario Hospital Services Commission, Toronto 7, Ontario.
Well, now for a last question for Dr. Nielsen. What do you feel will be the effect of the plan on hospitals generally and on the people in particular?
Well, Mr. Templeton, I think that the plan will solve a lot of problems for the hospitals and for the communities they serve. As for the people of our province, I feel that this will be one of the greatest boons that the residents of our province have experienced in a long, long time.
There, ladies and gentlemen, is a broad outline of hospital insurance for Ontario as it will take effect January 1st, 1959, under the Ontario Hospital Services Commission. Now, this is your plan, a plan designed to give you greater freedom, greater peace of mind when you encounter unexpected hospital expense. Its success? Well, its success will depend upon the proper use of its benefits and upon the moral support of the people of Ontario. And now, just one last reminder. Remember, you must be registered to benefit.